is so, he is a wonderful colleague to work with. As you can tell, he's like this. He's like this on air, off air, in social media is the same. All right. He's consistent. And Riaz has over 20 years of experience in HR. He's in HR. He's my guru. Okay. Before I even joined HR, he saw my transition. He commenced his HR career at ANZ, then contracted at both MMI Insurance, now Allianz and NCR, before joining Reuters to establish an internal recruitment team. This is so cool. I get to find out more about you, Riaz. And after joining in 2005, Riaz has held a number of HR positions within Thomson Reuters, such as HR advisor, HR manager, HR BP, senior HR roles, including a secondment to the head of talent acquisition. That's what I remembered that you were really specializing in. That's your domain expertise. It sits so clearly in my mind. His HR career has spanned many industries, including news, media, that's where we were, financial markets, banking and finance, insurance, private rail, wow, and IT. And I know he thrives in strategic HR guidance. So go to him, connect with him, and he has tons of advice on operational support to senior leadership across Australia and Asia. And today he's going to be sharing with us. I love this punchy one-liner. It's your interview. Please own it. All right. I'm just going to stop share. So it's not all just CV, yeah, Riaz?
Not all just CVs, Eileen. So
I've actually kind of prepped Riaz earlier on by asking him this question, what are the parts of the CV that he zoom in, based on someone's profile, anyone's profile?
Absolutely. Look, the first thing I'd say in terms of what I look at would, out of doubt, would be the most current role. Oh, okay. Whether that's the right thing or not, I'd look at what they're currently doing, how long they've been in that role, what the kind of industry that is, and how relevant that is to the role that I have. So that would be the first thing. Another interesting thing I have to say to you is that catches my eye on the first review of a CV.
Right.
Is actually if there's a mistake in there as well, if there's a grammar mistake or something that just suddenly shows up and stares at me, even though I wouldn't use it longer term to judge the overall, right. It is something that occasionally people make mistakes. And you made a point earlier in the excitement that a lot of people have, they forget to put their contact details. So they may have their name, and you often wonder, do I send out smoke signals? How do I get hold of this person? Yeah. So sometimes you find them, but yeah, in people's excitement as well, they tend
Thanks, Riaz. I'm gonna take note of that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Yeah, this is another tip to go out.
Another tip to go. Now, tell me something. Tell me when you can see my screen. Yeah, I'm hoping this is working now.
Yep. All nice and clear.
We're good to go. So everyone, look, thank you so much for having me today. Really excited to be here talking to you guys up in Singapore. Definitely one of my favorite places to go to. You have an exciting vibe up there. I'm only disappointed through COVID that no one's been able to travel as much as possible. As Eileen mentioned as well, we've worked together for a long period of time, and I did actually observe Eileen moving from the business into HR, and I think, Eileen, were you based up in Hong Kong at the time, or were you always in Singapore?
In Singapore, yeah.
Always in Singapore, yep, that's right. And so, look, we've worked together for a long period of time, a little while ago, and certainly had some good fun times. Eileen, like you're always on as well, always have that excitement and energy and such a wealth of experience that you can share with people. I've loved actually listening to you today, and I've written a few tips down for my own CV. As you mentioned, I've got over 20 years experience in HR, extensive experience in the talent acquisition space. I calculated earlier today, I think I've probably been involved in possibly 3,000 to 4,000 interviews in that time. As part of Thomson Reuters, we set up our Manila operation, or one of the operations, I should say. Tons of interviews, tons of recruitment that was happening there. And equally, our Beijing operation heavily involved in the setup and the establishment of some of the centres up there as well. So experience in terms of talent acquisition has been everything from frontline to CEO. Really excited to be talking to you today. We've talked about resumes. We've talked about it not being the only tool. Resumes get the attention of the recruiter, but it's what happens next that's really important as well. So what I want you to do is I want you to think this is your interview. I'm going to own it. That's most important. If you could take that away, that would be the one thing. I seem to be having some issues moving to my next screen for whatever reason. Here we go. What I wouldn't mind doing is, and Eileen, you may be able to help me here, is if I could ask everyone to chuck into the chat box a couple of people, just some of their thoughts, perhaps a word or two that describes their interviewing experience.
Very nice. So can everyone just type in the chat here, what has your interviewing experience been? Oh, Anna Wong says scary.
Oh, okay.
Hui Yi says nervous.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, yeah, Eddie. Hi, Eddie. Eddie says gone in 7 seconds. What?
Oh no.
Okay, I'm just gonna read off everyone's nerve-wracking, nervous, stressful, nervous and stressful, anxious, don't know what to expect, excited yet nervous, all goes well but wasn't selected. Okay. Interview means there is some interest, so I try to show my suitability as much as possible. Interview and never got back a reply. Confident, mind-blowing, stressful. Wow, you got a lot. Unexpected question. Oh, unexpected questions.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's only as easy as chit-chatting. If only it is as easy as
if only, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can certainly be that way. Let's have a look. I mean, some of you guys have shared some words that I absolutely expected. It can be scary. It can be nerve-wracking. It can be stressful. And the thing is, that really shows to a certain extent how excited you might have been about getting that job and wanting, and how serious you've taken it. I'll come back to the don't know what to expect, because that's going to be a big piece of what we want to take forward. The unexpected questions one as well that was raised as well. What we want to do is we want to get your preparation, and we want to turn that into some excitement and some energy for the role. That's what I want to see as a recruiter. And Jimmy, you might have a little bit later some different views on that, and I look forward to hearing about that. But let's get this jumpiness, the scariness, and into a level of excitement about the role. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about some of the things that can help prepare you for an interview. Let's start off. Speaking to some of my line managers, what are they saying? Look, the individuals came to the interview. They assumed that I had all knowledge about their prior experience. They didn't really answer the question. I thought they might have been better prepared, maybe even researched the requirements of the role. They came across as the role was already theirs. I could see kids in their background of the Zoom. And that's a really interesting one. The amount of people that have taken interviews from coffee shops in the new world that we're working on, where they are over, and you hear the barista making the coffee and the noise coming through. Just have a think about what's happening around you when you're coming into those interviews. The people that tended to land the jobs, and where the managers were very excited about what they did, was that they wore a suit. They'd already looked at the LinkedIn page, and Eileen, you talked about LinkedIn. They'd already looked at the LinkedIn page of the manager. They'd done some research. They'd come prepared. They'd come prepared with answers. Some people have referred to notes in interviews, and I'm happy with that. I'm fine with that. If you've got something that you prepared earlier, and not that you should be reading off that particular script, but if you've got some answers there, that would be really good. Enthusiasm, it shows through. It shows through in terms of the way you're sitting. It shows through in terms of the way you're answering the question, or even some of the questions that you're asking. And when you are preparing, don't just think about the technical pieces associated with the role. Think about some of the behaviors. Think about some of the things that you've done that are very, very relevant to the role. You can see what managers are saying there. I think we're going to share this a little bit later anyway. So Eileen, we can share that later, and we don't need to write it down now. So I'll move on because I am conscious of time. So first things first, here's my tips for you in terms of preparing for an interview. First of all, review the job description. Look at the job responsibilities. Look at the skills that are associated with that role. When you're walking into that interview, make sure that you know what you're talking to the recruiter or the hiring manager about. Research the business. What's happening in the news? What's something that may have come up that might be topical and a great place to start? in terms of a conversation. Yeah, don't go in without any sort of prep on that piece, because someone might ask you, hey, have you seen the news about, you know, Thomson Reuters or ANZ Bank, whatever it is today. So you need to be able to talk to that. Why you? Why is it that you are the person that we want for this particular role? Be prepared to talk to yourself. This is your moment. Your resume's got you this far. Now it's time to start talking about yourself. Prepare some opening comments about yourself and why you're the perfect person for this role. What sets you aside from the other candidates that have also gone for the job? Sounds a little bit unusual and it sounds uncomfortable. Write it down, practice it. Yeah, I can guarantee you if you come to an interview with me or any of my managers, we're going to ask you that question. Your motivation, how does this fit into your career goals? Why are you standing in front of us? Have you done enough thinking around your own career, where you want to be taking yourself? So how does this all connect? Yep. Your achievements, as Eileen mentioned earlier before, what sets you out from that next candidate? There might be 5 people that are going for a HR role with a particular organization. That role might require you to set up a function in Japan. Have you done that? And if you have done that, make sure that that comes out. Make sure you're ready to talk to that, because that's going to be relevant to the role that you're going for. Think about the technical aspects of the role and what you can bring to that. And equally, have a look at the possible competencies and prepare examples. I can't say this enough. Practice and preparation before you go into the interview. Lastly, have a think about the logistics. What you'd be wearing. It's often noticed if someone's wearing a suit or dressed up for it. I often say dress one up from what you think that the manager might wear. So if it's an organization that doesn't typically wear ties, then maybe just chuck on a tie. If it's an organization that typically wears ties, put on a jacket. Just dress your one up for that as well. Think about the lighting. Sometimes, as you can see here in Sydney, or maybe not, it started to rain outside and it's getting a bit darker. Some people forget to actually put a little bit of lighting on as well. So just have a think about those sorts of things. Book yourself a quiet space. Have the right level of lighting. You can get some if you're constantly working from home and you're going to be doing your interview from home. Get one of those lighting rings as well to make life easier as well. So that's our preparation. Yeah, absolutely. And a great question. Sometimes a great collared shirt would do the trick, just something neat that is considered appropriate business attire. I'll give you an example of some of the things that we've seen in the current interview situation. Hoodies, clear track shirt, those sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So absolutely. Consider what would be sort of considered business attire. Yep. Okay. Or something relevant. Yep.
Cool.
All right. So some of the things that you'll be sort of focusing on as we go through is that, or certainly what you would see and hear in an interview with me. And I'm just grabbing some notes here as well that I took earlier.
Yeah, nice.
If you're coming for an interview with me, I'm going to ask you an elevator pitch. I'm going to ask you a little bit about yourself. I'm going to then ask you to walk through your resume. I'm going to probably have looked for some gaps in there. I'm going to ask you about those gaps. There's been interviews that I've had where individuals have other people do their resume, and I've picked up a particular point, or I've seen a manager pick up a particular point and say, look, you've mentioned using Salesforce for reporting at XYZ level, and you'll see the person's face go, oh, and maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't done it. So that's where you just need to be mindful to know what you've done and to know what's on your resume, so you can actually walk through your resume and be able to answer questions against it. As I mentioned before, I'm going to ask you about why this role. What's your motivation and why does this fit into your career goals? What are your longer term career goals? It's definitely something we're going to ask you. Some technical questions associated with the role. We're going to ask you definitely where you may have been involved in Excel reporting, if it's in a finance role, or have you used Salesforce in a sales role, and so on and so forth. So be prepared to answer some of the technical questions associated with the role, and competency-based questions. Competency-based questions will come up, okay? And we're going to be asking you questions that are associated with the behaviors that will make you successful in this role. So what are competency-based questions I hear you ask? They're basically specific behavioral questions. They can be things like time management, relationship management. They can be around reporting. They can be team orientation. They can be customer focus. They're the behaviors that will make you successful in the role. And we'll often flower questions up that are technically orientated around a behavioral question. For example, if we were talking about a sales role and you had a very upset customer, okay, we might say to you, you've been selling into the airline industry, selling legal content into the airline industry, and you're speaking to a particular lawyer who doesn't have much time. Give us an example of how you've really had to quickly build a relationship with that lawyer and how you managed to still sell a product into that organization with limited time. Yep. So we're asking you to talk around behaviors, but we're coming from a technical perspective. So I'll give you an example of another competency-based type of question that may come up. This role requires you to solve customer issues. Can you give me an example of a time when you went that extra mile to really help a customer?
Lovely.
Now, what's that, Eileen?
Very nice, very nice. And we're gonna give the audience a chance to put your answer here so that Riaz can tell you whether that's a good answer or not a very good answer, where you can improve. Please type in the chat, all right? You know, candidly, candidly. So whether the answer passed his test or not. Okay. On the spot, right? Oh, you've got a few already. One is economy class is full. He upgraded the customer to business class for free.
Oh, I wish I was flying on that flight.
I wish you're serving me. Okay, so that's one entry. Another one is the guest lost her way to find the car. Okay, so what did you do? You help the guest to actually find where the car is located. Maybe I'm just guessing because maybe that's not your main line of work, and then you just went out of the way to help. Entry number 2. Entry number 3. My supplier had an issue by which they could not pay us, bank issues on their side. I went to meet the bank manager with them, sort out the issue, enable them to get paid. The supplier is now a personal friend. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I'm going to start with that one, if that's okay, Eileen.
Yeah.
But first of all, so we're facing a situation or a task that's quite complex. Okay, the customer's probably in an embarrassing situation. So my immediate thought is, and I'm going to dive in for more detail here anyway, if we had the benefit of time. What was the customer saying? How embarrassed? What were you doing to help manage? Money is such a sensitive thing. It can really be something that can really make someone quite embarrassed. They can lose face. So what were you doing? Tell me about your role in settling this customer down, how you're helping that customer save face. Right. I love that you went to meet with the bank manager. How did you gain that trust with the customer? Does a customer want to talk finances in front of you? Yeah, to somebody he may or may not know. They're a personal friend now. But what is it that you did? Where did you need to go to? Did you have to fly into that particular city? Did you have to meet them prior? What is all the steps that got to where you are right now? And that's giving me an idea of some of the steps and the actions, how much you took ownership of this customer's issue, what you did to settle that customer down, what you did to gain trust of that customer. It's definitely showing that you've gone the extra mile. I love it. But sure. What happened next? Yes, the customer became
I unmute myself and answer this.
Oh, great. Thanks,
yes,
Raj.
please, Raj.
Thank you, Riaz. Thanks, Eileen. Okay, this was a supplier. We were a commodity trading company at the time, and it's time critical that the documents get processed, and because they are running a huge interest on long as they don't get paid, they're incurring a huge interest, and so are we. So it is in our interest also that they are paid faster so that we could complete and book our trade faster. So there's a bit of self-interest in that, certainly. So from my company's point of view, but I know the situation because I've been there, and I didn't wait for them to tell me what's happening because I've been there. So I told them that this is how I know you're stuck and this is why you're stuck. So let's go to your bank and talk it out. And I went authorized to sort it out on my company's behalf. So we did it on the table in front of the desk, in front of the banking manager. It just happens that we were in the same city, we were in Singapore, and I knew their position very well. And I didn't wait for them to, talk to me about it. I could see where they came from, and I told them straight away that this is the case and I can help you deal with it.
Fantastic.
That's right.
Raj, I absolutely love that answer. And there's a number of reasons why, based on what you're telling us, you did. You've obviously got the situation where the customer can't pay. Difficult situation. You've personalized it. You've been there. You understand it. You knew what steps to take. You came from your company's perspective, whether it was in your heart, in your mind, whatever it is, you had your commercial hat on. It's in the best interests for you to now continue to take that forward. You showed a level of customer obsession for whatever reason. You wanted to help the customer, but also you knew that it was going to help us as yourselves as an organization. You met with the customer, you met with the bank, and you've got an outcome that was, was good for you. It was good. So your organization, it saved the customer's face, I'm assuming. It showed your dedication to the customer. I'll send you my details. We've got a couple of relationship manager roles on it.
Whoa. What did Raj just score for himself? Hey, everyone, can you please join me and congratulate Raj for being the brave soul? But
fantastic.
That's cool, yeah.
And if I could just say the economy class person, oh, look, I would absolutely love to let you know all of my flight details for the future. Okay.
Me too, Riaz. I want to be served by him.
You happily upgrade. So what you've just heard there is what we call the star. In the background, we're looking for the star. We're looking for what was the situation or the task. We want you to describe what you were facing, how complex that situation was, what were the tasks, what were the constraints, what were the specific challenges that needed to be addressed, what deadlines, what timeframes did you need to work to, what actions did Raj take, what was it that he did, what traits are we hearing in Raj that are going to be suitable for our role. Now, if I was hiring a relationship manager role, for example, and that was the sole question I'd be asking, I'm really excited about that. I'm also hearing commercial hat on, right? And the last piece was, what was the result? There's definitely going to be repeat business coming back from this person, without a doubt. And it sounds like the situation was absolutely solved. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for that star. Now, if I don't get it and I only get the actions and the results, I'm going to push back and say, just tell me a little bit more what you're facing, Raj. Now, if Raj told me an example of when he worked at in a part-time job when he was at university, I'm going to push for something a little bit more now, a little bit more recent, a little bit more complex, because I've got a slightly more complex role that I want Raj to be able to work in. Equally, in terms of the result, if Raj just says, oh, he was a personal friend, what else? Tell me what else. How do you know that the customer was happy? What told you that the results were good for the company? Have you had repeat business? I'd be asking all these questions. I'd probably say, what happened next? Tell us more about what the customer was saying that made you feel that everything went well.
Riaz, you mentioned something which I picked out, which is the examples does not have to be restricted to only the workplace examples. Yeah, because you mentioned it could be also a social environment, but that competency is consistent. It's
transferable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Eileen. It is something we would look for. We have some people that coach football teams or baseball teams, and they'll talk about team sport, and particularly if they're moving into a leadership role and they're a leader outside of the organization, but not inside. Yep. And they're coming for an internal role.
Yeah, that's good. So, for all of us who are listening in, if you're in transition in between jobs, and so examples do matter, right? Examples
absolutely.
Keep that current. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm conscious of time, so I think we've actually answered that question earlier. And as I mentioned, if you look at my piece of paper, how I'm writing notes down, I'm writing down the situation, I'm writing down the tasks and the actions taken, and I'm writing down the result. And if I don't have a result, I'll go back and ask questions. I'll often push to get a lot here. This is the heart for me. I really want to know what you were doing. I really need you to be concise, though. I really want you to go back and listen to the question that I'm asking, and I need you to be specific about what you did. Yep. So When we're listening for answers, we're gathering data about the suitability for a role. We're taking into consideration, does the person's technical profile at the resume level fit what we're looking for? Do they have the motivation to do the role? We've asked some questions around that. Do they have the technique, the behavioral competencies to be successful in the role? And then we're gathering all of this information, particularly when we're focusing on the individual questions, writing down, this is just a simple scale. The person isn't answering the question, they're going on tangents, they're speaking negatively, not being appropriate, or at the other end, they're very authentic in their answers. They're really demonstrating a solid command of the overall competency. And that's how we're sort of giving a positive or a negative star, if that makes sense. So look, a couple of last tips, and I'm just going to be finishing up in a moment. Listen carefully to the question. Absolutely try and answer it as much as possible. If you get overexcited and you forget where you are, it's okay to ask and just say, look, I've gone so deep. I'm excited to answer this question. Tell me, just remind me, am I answering your question? Or just ask back. Know your achievements, be able to articulate those, be able to quote some numbers if it's something that you're going for. Respond with examples, don't generalize. Focus on what you did. Yep, that's what we're really interested in. A lot of people may come and say, oh, we did this, we did that. I'm going to ask the question, what did you do? What was your role in this? Yep. Be prepared to ask questions. This is a two-way street. You want to be finding out more about the role as much as they want to be, or the interviewer wants to find about you. This is your career. This is your interview. What are we doing? We're owning it, right? If you're interested in the role, make sure you let people know you're interested in the role. Show it in your body language. Yep. Close it out, ask for some next steps and timeframes, and always thank the interviewers for their time as well. Reiterate your interest. If you're absolutely interested, let them know. I love it when someone says, I'm so excited about wanting to work for Thomson Reuters. I'm so excited about, talking to you today about this role. It's something that really gives me a buzz. Eileen?
Do you, Riaz, will you feel like it's a bit cliche, like, okay, I'm sure you will say that to me, or you should be able to sense that, right? From the years of experience, whether they are faking it.
You can sense it. Absolutely. You can sense it. Yeah.
It's better to say, yeah.
Absolutely. So last piece, couple of do's and don'ts for you just to think about. Try not to feel, and I always find myself sitting myself back up when you're in these interview situations. Try not to move around too much. It's distracting. Slouching can often maybe not show a level of interest. Some people are funny. Oh, did you see they folded their arms their entire interview? Don't swing around on the chair. Those sorts of things can just be a little bit distracting, but definitely sit up straight. Smile. When you're smiling, it actually brings a happiness to your voice. If you're on a phone interview, it's even more important. Maintain some good eye contact as well. Direct your body language towards the interviewer as well. So you're responding to that question. Sometimes you see people only talking to one person, even though there could be three people in the room. Give positive affirmation. So as you said, your nonverbal here, Eileen, is really going to be giving, or telling us how you feel in that interview situation, and address everyone. I think I said that earlier before. So look, the one thing I want you to take away from today, preparation, 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 so that you don't feel stressed, you don't feel nervous, you don't feel that there's going to be a question that you're not ready for. Look, this is your time to share what you've done. Okay, this is your time to show your relevance to the role. Be excited, but prepare beforehand. Yep. If you've got any questions after today, you're welcome to reach out to me. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. Yeah, I mean, look, there's always a fine line between showing a level of interest and stalking. And is WhatsApp the best forum for you to do that? Is that how you've been communicating with the company? Did they give you a time frame, Linda? It's likely they're still going through the process. WhatsApp wouldn't necessarily be always the way I would communicate. I'd maybe pick up the phone. It's probably a little bit more formal. Email is also another one. So maybe just drop them a note and Yeah, maybe just drop them a courtesy email and just say, hey, really enjoyed our conversation last week. Not sure if you saw my WhatsApp message. Really look forward to hearing back from you at, based on and play back the timelines. You mentioned that it's going to be July, so really look forward to speaking to you in early July. And people do that. It's human nature as well. I would just very lightly address it in a very subtle and gentle way. Do not put down your previous organization. Certainly, they've been your employer. You have been that organization. You've worked for that organization. You're part of their success for so long. So just be really, really gentle and careful about how you answer those. Yeah, don't engage into too much of a conversation that's negative.
I'm with you because you only got this limited airtime. You want to focus your airtime talking about possibilities of you joining and not give airtime to someone else, which is correct. The previous company. I like this particular question that says, this is from Richard, and he asks, is how do you react when he uses the pronoun we versus I?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the question, what was your role?
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to ask you that question. And I would say, was it Richard?
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I'd be saying, Richard, you've talked a lot about we, and I get that you worked in a team on this. What was your role? Tell me more about your particular role in this. Yeah, and I'm going to dive in further and further and further. And it's so natural because some of us are so team orientated and so inclusive and all that sort of stuff that you'll naturally respond with that. But I'm going to ask you, what was your particular role? Tell me more about yours. Yeah.
Okay. So Richard, if you want to comment in the chat, that's fine. Let us know what was your role there. And it's a valid question because he was thinking, if I use we, will it show more of me as a team player rather than I itself? Yep. Yeah.
And you can start off your response with, look, we were involved in this, but I'm going to specifically talk about my role.
Okay. That sounds wonderful. All right, let me see. There is also another question, just one more. Maybe I can just squeeze in one or two more. Okay, this question is from Michelle. She says, with regards to thank you email, and should that be sent to the HR personnel who emailed you to organize the interview or to the interviewer? And
well, I mean, I personally like chocolates, Michelle, but look, it's funny. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone's part of the overall recruitment process. So you want to make sure that you're addressing everyone in that process. Now, if you've just met with the manager and you've got their details, absolutely drop them a note. If you can drop both of them in a note, that's great too. But make sure with whoever you've met with, I love it when people write a note back. It just shows that they're building. You too, Eileen?
Yeah, I love it.
It just shows that they're interested in the role, that they've just got that level of something, I don't know, that, it certainly aligns to the values of the organization I work within now, that you are courteous and that you do think about, making sure that people are aware of what you're thinking and you're open and, you're coming back with a little bit of a thank you. So definitely to both the HR person who's involved, and even if they just organize the interview, thanks for organizing the interview, really appreciate that. Eileen, thanks for meeting with me earlier today.
Yeah, I mean, anything, even flattery will persuade me very quickly.
Me too.
I fall for that. You too.
Now, I'm going to talk broadly about my experience across Asia with the company that I'm with now. Family backgrounds do not have any relevance on your ability to do the job. Okay. That's a really, in certain locations, that could almost border on a discriminatory question. Yep. I once heard someone ask a candidate, and it was a Pan-Asia interview. I was in Australia. This person was in another location. The question they asked the candidate, are you married? And I said, you don't need to answer that question, quite simply, because why? We were going to end up in court if they did. Yep. Interesting, that person got the job, but I could actually see that candidate's face of shock. Yeah. So when someone's asking about family background, it really doesn't have a relevance to the role itself. It's a question whether you want to work for that company anyway. Put it in the back of your mind. It shouldn't be asked.
It shouldn't be asked. I'm with you.
Call it out. Yeah.
we've got a tripartite association here that I would like to encourage all job seekers and professionals, get yourself familiarized on it. There are a lot of examples as to the no questions that interviewers shouldn't be asked. And I'm totally with everyone here, including Riaz, of course. You know, don't answer questions which you are, they have no place to ask, because it could be a legal, it could end up with a legal case as well. So know your rights.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it okay for the candidate to ask, you know, can you tell me a bit more about the workload or the intensity of the role?
Yeah, I like the reference to intensity as opposed to workload. Workload may or may not cast a negative light on what you're asking, or what you're being asked of, or the role that you're going for. I like the term that you used, Eileen. Tell me about the intensity. What does a day look like? You know, because I'm assuming you're coming from a work-life balance, and we all want that. So yeah, it's okay. But dress it up to tell me a little bit more about what a day looks like, and tell me more about sort of the intensity of the work coming through, and so on and so forth, so you can assess. I think if you just said, is the workload heavy, it might come through as a little bit too negative, and it should be part of your research on the role, to make sure it's right for you. Yeah, and that's fine. So in the hygiene questions with the recruiters or with the HR department, definitely, I don't like to answer about compensation, but that's the setup of how we work here. Compensation will come up as a separate conversation. It's not one we're talking about the role. If you're only interested in the compensation, then maybe have that conversation with the HR department before it comes to the interview process. Yep.
Thank you so much, Riaz, for
spending
your time with us. It's a nice catch up with
Absolute pleasure, and it's great to see you, Eileen. I'm going to try and answer some of these questions as well while I'm here. Look forward to everyone connecting, Eileen.
Thank you.